He was no longer the president. He was just a man with questions. But when the Pope called him to Rome with only 3 words, "It has begun," Bill Clinton would soon discover a truth older than every Bible and more dangerous than any war. January 2002. He had left the White House, but not the weight. Power, he discovered, doesn't vanish. It lingers, like ash on the hands. And when the envelope came, it felt heavier than anything he'd held during his presidency. There was no sender, no seal, just a single card, handwritten in precise Latin. "It has begun. Come alone. Sanctus." It bore the papal crest, but not the modern one. This was older, obscure, used only by popes in times of spiritual emergency. Clinton had seen it once, in a Vatican codex during his first term. That crest hadn't been used since 1348, the year the Black Death was said to be divine punishment. He didn't tell anyone, not his security detail, not even Hillary. 2 days later, he was in Rome. The guards at the Apostolic Palace didn't ask questions. They led him down a marble hallway and through a narrow, torchlit passage deep beneath the Vatican. At the end, a wooden door, old, unadorned, and waiting behind it was the Pope, not on a throne, not surrounded by clergy, just a man in white, sitting at a stone table, hands folded, silent. Clinton entered. No greetings, no cameras, only this. "You once asked, 'Why does God remain silent?'" Clinton froze. He had asked that, but in private, in a diary, 20 years ago. A single sentence scrawled after a funeral. How did the Pope know? Because now, he has spoken. The Pope slid forward a small black book. Its leather was cracked, its pages yellowed, but the writing inside was fresh. It was not written by hand, the Pope said. It appeared, overnight, in the chamber of silence, where no pen or voice is allowed. The message inside was only one line. "Prepare the listener. The word is returning." Clinton stared at the page. "Is this prophecy?" he asked. "No," the Pope replied. "It is an announcement." Then the room fell cold. Not physically, but spiritually. Like something old had entered. The Pope leaned forward, eyes sharp. "I chose you not because of your faith, but because of your doubt. God does not seek believers. He seeks witnesses." Clinton couldn't speak. His mind raced. The wars, the scandals, the prayers left unanswered, and now this? "Why me?" The Pope smiled faintly. "Because you asked the question kings feared to ask. What if God is real, but nothing like we imagined?" He stood. "There is something you must see. Something hidden since before Constantine. You must decide if it should remain hidden." They walked deeper underground, past locked gates, past frescoes no historian had catalogued. At the final door, the Pope paused. "After this, you will not be able to unknow." And Clinton, with every nerve awake, stepped through. "There are words that build worlds," the Pope said, "and there are words that unmake them." The room Clinton entered felt impossibly old, older than the Vatican itself. It smelled of parchment and fire, walls lined with scrolls written in alphabets no scholar had seen. In the center, a pedestal made of black stone. Upon it, a single page, glowing faintly. The Pope did not touch it. He simply said, "Read." Clinton approached slowly. The symbols were foreign, yet familiar, like a dream half remembered. And then, somehow, the meaning formed in his mind. One word, no translation, but he understood it. And the moment he did, he felt something break. A fracture, a quiet collapse inside him, like a truth too heavy for the soul to carry. He staggered back. "What is this?" he whispered. "It is the original word," the Pope answered. "Not from the Bible, not from any prophet. It was never spoken, because it was never meant to be heard." Clinton sat. His hands trembled. "It doesn't say anything. It just is." "Yes," the Pope nodded. "It's not a command. It's not a law. It's a permission." A silence followed, not empty, but charged. The Pope explained. Thousands of years ago, the earliest scribes encountered this word in the desert, during the first divine visions. But when they wrote it down, something happened. The people who read it lost all sense of hierarchy, of obedience. They stopped worshiping, not from disbelief, but because they no longer felt the need to. They became free. Dangerously free. Faith collapsed, the Pope said. Not because God died, but because humanity no longer needed an interpreter. So the word was buried. Not destroyed. Buried. Hidden beneath centuries of theology, politics, and doctrine. A forgotten frequency in the architecture of belief. And now, the Pope said, it has returned. Not through scripture. Through will. Clinton looked up. Then why me? Because you understand power. And you've seen what happens when it's unearned. Or unleashed. The Pope opened a drawer. Inside was a journal. Handwritten. His own. He slid it forward. 2 months ago, I read the word. And every night since, I have dreamt of cities without cathedrals, of worship without fear, of a world with no holy man, only holy choices. Clinton shook his head. Then why not tell the world? The Pope stared into the distance. Because truth is not always light. Sometimes it's fire, and fire burns before it illuminates. Then he turned to Clinton. The word must not be revealed without a listener who understands the risk. A pause. You are not a prophet, William. You are a test. Clinton stood. The page on the pedestal no longer glowed, but its presence lingered, like a note still ringing after the piano is closed. If I share it, he said quietly, everything changes. If you don't, the Pope replied, everything stays the same. They left the chamber in silence, but as they reached the surface, a messenger approached. He whispered something into the Pope's ear. The Pope's face went pale. It has begun, he said again. What? Clinton asked. Someone else has spoken the word. Doctrine is not divine, the Pope whispered. It is human memory, desperate for order. The Vatican was not a city. It was a vault, and deeper than any tourist ever saw. Beneath the painted ceilings and golden chalices, there existed a place no history book had mentioned. The Sanctum Ex Nihilo, the Chamber of Nothing, a space built by the first popes not to glorify God, but to contain what they could not explain. The Pope took Clinton there himself. No guards, no clergy, just 2 old men and a truth too heavy to carry alone. The walls were bare. No icons, no crosses, no altars, just shelves. On them, books written in languages lost before Latin ever existed. And at the center, a table with a single object, a mirror, but it showed no reflection. This is where doctrine dies, the Pope said. He placed a hand on the mirror, and it shimmered, not with light, but with memory. Suddenly, Clinton felt everything. A prophet exiled for saying God wanted no temples. A scribe tortured for writing that salvation required no blood. A woman burned for claiming that heaven begins with choice, not obedience. All of them had touched this mirror. All of them had heard a voice that said the same thing. I do not dwell in stone. I do not speak in tongues. I live in the will. Clinton fell to his knees. Then every church, every scripture. Interpretations, the Pope said gently. Helpful sometimes, but never final. Clinton looked up, struggling to reconcile decades of faith, doubt, and diplomacy. Why keep this hidden? Because belief needs structure, and structure needs walls. But heaven has no walls. Clinton stood. If this got out, there would be chaos, the Pope said. Not because it is untrue, but because it is freeing. The mirror dimmed. The Pope turned away. You asked why God stays silent. He doesn't. We just built churches so loud, we drowned him out. That night, Clinton couldn't sleep. Not from fear, from awakening. In his dreams, he stood not before a throne, but before possibility. No gods, no chains, just the endless question. What will you choose? The next morning, alarms echoed through the Vatican. A manuscript had been stolen, one containing a full transcription of the word. It had not been destroyed. It had been uploaded to the internet. The Pope turned to Clinton. You were supposed to be the listener. Clinton whispered. Now we all are. Every religion is built on silence, the Pope said. But once the silence ends, what are we left with? The Vatican had changed. Not visibly, but in spirit. The walls felt thinner, the air heavier, as if the city of God was now under siege, not by armies, but by awareness. The word had been uploaded, not to news outlets, not to governments, but to encrypted corners of the internet, forums, academic archives, underground theology sites. It was spreading, not like a virus, but like a question no one could unask. And with it came unrest. Some called it the true signal, others the blasphemy algorithm. Some even worshipped the word itself, though they didn't understand it. Within a week, riots broke out in Cairo. Monasteries in Tibet closed their gates. Evangelical preachers denounced the internet as demonic. One Orthodox bishop collapsed mid-sermon, whispering, "I heard him, and he is not what we built." In the eye of the storm, two men remained in Rome, Bill Clinton and the Pope. They met in a high stone room overlooking St. Peter's Square. The crowds below were chanting. Some were praying. Others were demanding answers. The Pope looked tired. "You said you would protect it," he said quietly. "And I did," Clinton replied, "until someone else didn't." A long pause. "Now it's out, and it can't be taken back." The Pope walked to the window. "I thought you of all people would understand restraint." Clinton stepped forward. "And I thought you would understand that truth isn't a threat, unless you treat it like one." Their voices remained calm, measured, but beneath them a fault line. "You think the world is ready?" the Pope asked. "I think the world has never been ready," Clinton said. "Not for democracy, not for science, not for love, but it finds its way anyway." The Pope turned, his voice rising for the first time. "They will weaponize it, Bill. They already are. Do you know what some are calling it? The final doctrine, the last voice. They're building churches around a word that was never meant to be worshipped." Clinton remained still. "Maybe that's the test." "It's not a test. It's a trap," the Pope said. "Truth without structure is chaos. Structure without truth is tyranny," Clinton answered. Silence again, the kind that lives in the heart of ruined temples. That night, the Pope issued a statement, a rare one, delivered not from the balcony, but from a darkened chamber, streamed to only a handful of trusted cardinals. A word has emerged that some claim is divine. It is not sanctioned. It is not canon. It is not church. He did not denounce it, but he did not bless it either. Clinton, watching from another room, felt the walls closing in, not just around the Vatican, but around the question itself. That night, the Pope summoned him one last time. They met in the Apostolic Library. There was no formality now, no theology, just two men and a bottle of aged wine. "I dreamed of you last night," the Pope said. "You were standing before a crowd, holding a flame, and they reached for you, not to follow, but to extinguish you." Clinton laughed softly. "You too." The Pope looked down at his hands. "Maybe I am the heretic. Maybe I've always been." "No," Clinton said. "You were the last believer, the kind who knew belief was dangerous, and still you listened. Then what does that make you?" Clinton paused. The witness. Outside, the world was shifting, not all at once, but irrevocably. Churches dimmed their lights. Synagogues reopened ancient books. Mosques echoed with verses never recited aloud. People didn't abandon God. They just stopped waiting for permission. A Vatican advisor entered the room. "Holiness," he said, eyes wide. "It's the children." "What about them?" the Pope asked. "They're hearing it, the word, in their dreams." The Pope stood. Clinton felt a chill run through him. "Then it's begun," the Pope said. "Not a reformation, not a rebellion. A resurrection," Clinton whispered. The Pope turned to him one last time. "What will you do now?" Clinton looked out the window, to a sky that felt closer than it ever had. "Same thing I always do when the world's not ready. Try anyway. A man dies once, but a witness never really dies." William J. Clinton, Private Journal, March 2002. The night before the announcement, Rome was silent. Not quiet silent, the kind of stillness that feels deliberate, heavy, holy, as if the air itself was holding its breath. The Pope was to speak at sunrise, a global broadcast, not just to Catholics, but to every person with a screen. The Vatican had authorized full access. The world was waiting, but inside the apostolic palace, he was dying. Clinton sat beside his bed. No cameras, no aides, just the last living man to hear the word before it broke loose, and the last pope to believe he could still contain it. The doctor said it was a stroke, but Clinton knew better. "You knew this was coming," he said softly. The pope nodded barely. "I felt him leave yesterday." Clinton looked down at the man's frail hands, the same hands that had held the truth and chose silence, and then light. "You weren't wrong," he said. "You just weren't allowed to be right." The pope's eyes fluttered open one last time. "Write it down, but don't explain it." Clinton leaned closer. "Explain what?" A whisper, a final breath, the confession, and then he was gone. The next morning, the podium was empty. The broadcast was canceled. No explanation. Only one image leaked from the Vatican: Clinton, walking out alone, head bowed, one hand holding a small black notebook. Panic spread. Theories bloomed. Some said the Pope had been silenced. Others believed he had ascended. One group declared that the Word had chosen a new vessel, and it was Clinton. He never responded. Weeks passed. Then months. Clinton withdrew. No lectures. No interviews. Just silence. Some said he had gone mad. Others that he was forming a new order. He was seen in Ethiopia. Then in Argentina. Then not at all. But something strange began happening. Around the world, children began repeating the word, not reading it, speaking it unprompted, in sleep, in prayer, in songs. And with it came change. A village in Mongolia built a temple with no walls. A mosque in Indonesia erased its ceiling. A priest in Portugal burned his own Bible and called it worship. Scientists at MIT discovered patterns in brainwaves matching the frequency of the word, calling it divine interference. Governments tried to intervene. They couldn't, because the word wasn't in books anymore. It was in people. 1 year later, an envelope arrived at the Vatican. No return address. Inside, a single page. A confession. Handwritten. By Bill Clinton. I saw the truth. I saw what we buried. I saw that we mistook structure for faith, silence for absence, ritual for love. We turned God into a password, and he waited patiently in the question we feared to ask. Now the word is loose, not to destroy belief, but to scatter it, like seeds. Some will wither, some will burn, but some will grow. I do not know if we are better off now. I do not know if this world can bear what it knows. But I know this. The voice we heard, it was not a command. It was a choice. And I chose to let it speak. Forgive me, or don't. I no longer believe in forgiveness. I believe in memory. And this is mine. In the final pages of the confession, he added only one sentence, written in simple ink. No theology. No fear. Heaven was never far. Epilogue voiceover fades. Bill Clinton was never seen again. Some say he walks barefoot through deserts, leaving no footprints. Others say he became the first true heretic in centuries, not because he disbelieved, but because he believed differently. And far beyond politics, religion, and power, a new kind of church began to rise. No buildings, no borders, only witnesses. And they didn't preach. They just listened. Because now, God was not speaking to us. He was speaking through us. The word is not holy. The word is human. If you like the video, don't forget to subscribe and press the like button.